readers, how are you tonight? Hey, have I got a special guest to introduce you to? If you have not met Jody before, you guys are in for a treat. She is so much fun to listen to. I have enjoyed over 30 books by her. We were trying to get an exact number, but you know what? 30 is pretty impressive, and they are fascinating. She writes historical, she writes in medieval times, she writes a little bit towards contemporary, which is what the new one is because it's a time travel book. So tonight, Jody is joining us. I am so glad you're here, Jody. Thanks for joining us.
Well, thanks for having me. And thanks for all you friends for joining in out in Cyberland. I wish I could see you all in person, but this will suffice for tonight.
And I agree, Jody. Soon, very soon, we'll have people
Yeah.
that we could do this again. So we will have to keep a date open for you when you can come in. So when book 2 comes out.
Yeah.
You do hint at that at the end of this one. So so tell me about Come Back to Me. I got to tell you, when I found out you were writing a time travel book, I'm like, she's doing a what? Because, you know, you're known for your historicals. You are. I mean, and there's nothing wrong with it because they're fabulous. Don't get me wrong. I'm not upset about that at all. But travel's a little different. So
Yeah. Yes. Well, this is definitely different. And what can I say about Come Back to Me? Well, it's a blend of contemporary, like you said, a little bit of historical and suspense, and you could throw in a little bit of fantasy, I guess. And so basically, it's for every reader out there. And so the plot of this novel, if you have not read it yet, is that we have a contemporary heroine who's a research scientist, and her name is Marion Creighton, and she's desperate to find a cure for her sister who is dying of a deadly genetic disease. And her father, who is also a research scientist, is working on a cure as well. But his research has taken him on a slightly different path, one that involves mythical holy water that he believes contains properties from the tree of life from the Garden of Eden. And so he believes this holy water can ultimately cure any disease and possibly even allow for crossing over in time. And so, of course, his daughter Marion thinks his theories are absolutely crazy. Yeah, until all sorts of bad things begin to happen to her. Her dad not only falls into a coma, but she's stalked, she's chased, she's shot at, she's almost kidnapped. And then she realizes maybe her dad was on the cusp of discovering something because so many other people want this. And so in the midst of all this drama, Marion begins to have some time crossings for herself. She has these slight overlaps in time until eventually she decides she really has to go back and find out what has happened to her dad and to locate more holy water. And so Marion soon finds herself plunging into the Middle Ages and actually ends up in the midst of a bloody peasant revolt. So of course, she meets her knight in shining armor. Couldn't resist putting a knight in there. And so this knight helps Marion kind of navigate through this tumultuous time. And he even offers to marry her for her protection. So I'm not going to give any more away than that. You'll have to read the story to find out how Marion survives her trip, and most importantly, if she finds true love.
Now, knowing you, that, yeah, exactly. And that always kind of leads me into why a time travel now? I mean, you know, like we both have said, it's very different for you. So what made you want to write one?
Well, yeah, as you said, this is a very different genre from anything I've ever done. Mostly I'm known for my historical romances. And this is definitely a step away from that particular genre. But I'm super excited about it because it is different, and it's not really something that's been done in the Christian book market for a while. So of course, the secular market has done this genre successfully with books like the Outlander series. But this is a little bit different for CBA, the Christian Book Association. And so I'm excited to kind of usher this in. And so far, the reviews from readers have been really positive. I think they're ready for something like this, I hope. And honestly, I've always loved reading time travels. It's just been something that's been really fun for me. And they've always been one of my favorites to read. So as I was thinking about how to develop my own time crossing plot, I wanted to find a unique vehicle, like a vehicle for them to travel back into the past. Something that didn't involve like a time machine or fast cars or even stone hedges. I wanted something that was not going to take the body entirely out of the present and plop it into the past. So as I was researching time crossings, I came across some research about comas and how people who've been in comas wake up having very realistic dreams while in a comatose state. And those dreams almost made them feel like they were living in a different era. And so I also, when I was researching, learned that the ancient holy water that was once believed to cure diseases also gave realistic visions. The holy water, as you will find out when you read the novel, was sold in medieval times to pilgrims in small flasks called ampulla. And as these pilgrims would drink the holy water or holy oil, some of them would be cured from diseases. In fact, if you go to Canterbury Cathedral today, there's stained glass windows there called the miracle windows, and they have pictures in stained glass of different stories of people who were supposedly healed from drinking the water. So after all that research, I decided I would merge the two concepts, the comatose state with the realistic visions and the holy water with the realistic visions. And so that became my vehicle for transporting a person into the past. And so my characters will drink a small amount of the holy water, which puts them in a coma, and then they're able to cross over in a quest to find more holy water. So of course, having the body in two eras did create some hurdles to work through during the writing and the editing. But overall, my hope is that when readers put down the book, they'll wonder, like, the other characters in the story, did that really happen? Did they really go into the past, or was that just all a dream? So that's kind of the premise of the whole story.
I have to agree. I would probably hesitate to believe somebody that told me, well, I was just in the Middle Ages.
Yeah.
So, there was a part in there where I was reading Miriam's story when she was back in the Dark Ages, where it struck me how much there was such a cultural difference, between, I mean, women being basically property back then. And suddenly you have somebody very modern going, well, that's not right. You ever wonder what that would cause? Would it be something that would be a problem if somebody would time travel? We're going to believe we can time travel.
Yeah. Oh, for sure. I think that our modern concepts of women are so different than what you would find in the Middle Ages. But surprisingly, as I was researching this novel, I did have a medieval expert in England who read through the manuscript come back and tell me women did have more rights during the Middle Ages than we typically think they did. And so that was kind of interesting to learn that.
That is interesting. I will have to agree with you. I would not have thought that. So interesting. Well, that answers a good question. Like I said, off and on through the book, I kept thinking that. So, and so you brought that up. What kind of research did you do into either the Middle Ages or, well, time travel?
Yeah. Well, since time travel is largely science fiction, most of my ideas came straight from my imagination for that. But I did do some research to try and make the concepts of time travel believable. So I drew on some physics concepts regarding breaching time and space, and I did some research on popular theories. I read The Order of Time by Carlo Rovelli, I think is his name. And he also wrote 7 Brief Lessons on Physics. Yeah. And then,
Reading that.
yeah, it was very fun. Well, and I don't delve too deeply into all of that scientific terminology and all those theories, but it was good to have that basis and to be able to kind of flavor a little bit of the story with some of that. But the other thing that I had to do more research on was on the holy water and the holy oil, and just kind of the different stories surrounding that. There are actually quite a few historical accounts of people throughout history who spoke of life-giving water. I was really surprised at how many. For example, Alexander the Great, he had some mythical exploits regarding the holy water, and there was obviously one we know a little more about was Ponce de Leon. During his explorations of Florida, he was looking for a fountain of youth or whatever that was. And so interestingly, these healings that happened as a result of water are recorded in various accounts that having taken place in England, France, and Italy. Those were the most places that I found healings taking place during certain periods of time. And so while nothing has ever truly been proven about what this water healing people, like I said, there's the windows in the Canterbury Cathedral that attest to something having gone on. So aside from all of that, I did do quite a bit of research into the Middle Ages to try and really make the story as realistic and detailed as possible for that time period. Of course, it would be a modern woman, her perspective, and how she viewed the Middle Ages. So it's kind of through a modern lens. But during the time that she goes back into the Middle Ages, she falls into the year 1381, which I picked because it was the beginning of what has become known as the Peasant Revolt. And so this was a time of upheaval in England where high taxes were being levied on the poor, and they rose up and started to rebel against the nobility. And so Marion lands in this time period when the peasants are beginning to roam around the countryside, and their numbers are swelling every day, and they're killing and they're pillaging and just leaving this vengeful destruction in their wake. And so they really did attack Canterbury as the way it's portrayed in the story. And they really did coerce knights, the nobility, to join their ranks by threat of killing their wives and children. They forced them to join their ranks. And they truly did go converge upon London, which I also portray in the story, invading the city and murdering many, many people before they finally did meet with the king right outside of London. So all of that really truly happened. And so it was fun to be able to portray that whole experience through Marion's eyes and just bring that to life.
Isn't that interesting? I have to admit, there's the scene, and I think, I don't know where it is in the story, so hopefully I'm not giving much away because it's kind of a fun little scene, is where she actually takes a bath, and they seem kind of surprised that she wanted to take a bath. And I've often thought of the smells of that age.
Mm-hmm. I know. Yeah, they certainly had, I mean, so much less than we do now with running water and the ability to just even get a drink of cold water, I mean, it's just so it was fun to try and think of all the various things that would have been different for a woman jumping back into that period, and the things she would have missed, and the way she would have been comparing the two time periods. So that was really fun.
Oh, good. That's awesome.
Mhm.
Did you find anything out that was like very unique to that period that you included in the book? Or was it just kind of, like you said, you included the revolt, which I found
Mhm.
fascinating. I went and looked it up and read about it. So it was a
Mhm.
thing, but was there something like, well, this is going to be fun to include in?
Oh yeah, there were lots of details. The Middle Ages is just full of so many surprising details. And so that's really one of the reasons why I just love writing in that era, because there's just so much danger and so many weird diseases, and so much stuff that happens that you just, that we don't experience. And so it makes plotting really fun and easy. But one of the things I think that I found the most interesting was that during this whole time that England is experiencing their own sort of revolt within the country, they're also at war with France in what is known as the Hundred Years' War. And so our very swoony hero, he was fighting in this war over in France, and had been there for 10 years of his life. And we find that probably very shocking to think, wow, what a war going on like this for, I mean, 100 years. And, he's been there, and he's home for a short leave when he meets Marion, and he's expecting to go back just because that's what's expected of him. And he's doing his duty like everyone else. But I found that very interesting that this war was so long and so brutal. And so when I was trying to understand Will's character, the hero, what I did is I read a lot of the accounts of knights who were fighting in the Hundreds Years' War. And so just learning how long they had to be away from home, what life was like living over in France for them, and fighting such brutal battles, and just the type of warfare that they had at that time. So Will's tragedy and his woundedness are truly based off of knights that I had read about and kind of pieced together various just different stories of different knights who fought in that war. So I would say that was probably the most interesting thing, was to learn more about that particular time in history I hadn't really thought about much.
Yeah, and I agree with you. That was fascinating. I like history
Mhm.
anyways. I've confessed that before. So
Yeah.
learn something new, and especially about the Dark Ages, because it isn't one, that you go and read about a lot. So
Hmm.
yeah, so thanks for including that too, and letting us know that, that is
Hmm.
actually what happened, that they were gone for years
Yeah.
fighting, so
Right.
yeah, just different, just different.
Hmm. Yeah.
So, oh, I have one upside down. That's always helpful. So it makes it so I can, one of the readers, wants to know who or what inspired the main characters.
Well, um, like I said, with the hero, Will, he is inspired by these knights who fought in the Hundred Years' War. And he really, um, just in reading how tragic their losses were, and the just the devastation that they experienced, that's how he was birthed. I really wanted a character who was a hero who was wounded very deeply from and felt very passionately about life and his experiences. And so he's this knight who is honorable, chivalrous, he's very caring and loving of his family, but he's also very wounded because of something tragic that happened to him over while he was fighting. So I won't give that away. As far as Marion, really, I wanted to have this woman who was super, super modern in a sense that she's so educated. She's very passionate about her family, but also just want someone who represents all modern women, I guess, to some extent, so that when she goes into the past, everyone can be able to see and relate with what she's going through because they relate with her as a character. So that's what I was hoping with her, is that all of us modern women could somehow relate.
I have to admit, and I and I know, little about pharmaceutical anything. But
Yeah.
I have to admit, she adjusted to being dumped into the Middle Ages probably better than I would have.
Oh yeah. Yeah, me too.
I would have been looking for the light switch the whole time I'm there. And, using their sort of bathrooms probably would have been way past me.
Oh yeah.
So yeah, I don't see myself time traveling anytime soon.
Yeah, I have a hard enough time camping, so time traveling would be way hard for me.
My idea of roughing it is a condo that doesn't have really good air conditioning.
Yeah, mine too.
Yep, I'm with you on that one. So, is there anything you would hope the readers get from this book?
Well, as far as themes, there are quite a few themes that come out as far as loyalty to family and the whole idea of forgiving and really being able to, in a spiritual sense, be able to trust that God is in control even when it doesn't seem, I mean, in this story, obviously things are way out of control, but somehow God is working all this out anyway. And so I think in the end, Marion kind of comes to that realization that, he's worked out all these details, and she can rest in the fact that she's where she needs to be, and that miracles still do happen, even if they're not in quite the way we expect them to happen.
So I have a couple questions, and so I'm going to ask mine first, and I'm going to follow up because they kind of all wrap together here. Is, first of all, how many books are going to be in this series? Okay,
good question. Well, right now, there are currently 2 that are slated for release. And as we're talking about Come Back to Me, which releases in exactly 1 week, next Tuesday, but you can pre-order from Baker Bookhouse and get it early and 40% off with free shipping. So if you haven't ordered, get it tonight. The second book is Never Leave Me, and it releases in January of 2022. So in about 6 or 7 months. And it takes up this story of 2 of the minor characters in Come Back to Me. It takes up the story of Marion's friend Harrison and her sister Ellen. And so I'm not going to say much about it, but it is a really cool story. I've really enjoyed writing it. And I'm actually going to be starting some work on editing it here in a few weeks. I've already done a whole bunch of edits, but I've got another one coming. So, and as far as if I will carry on the series after the second book, I definitely have set up the second book for a continuation. There are 2 characters in the second book that I would love to keep. I would love to give their own story. But I'm kind of waiting at this point to see how readers really like the series before I plunge into writing that third book. And so if I get enough interest and people really like the series, then I could definitely be persuaded to keep going.
Yay. Who do we write to tell them to make sure you write a third book? Awesome. By the way, yeah. I have to say, and I meant to say it earlier and I forgot, I love this cover. I mean, yeah, it is phenomenal. So, But yeah,
Yeah,
it's just
they did a
beautiful.
great job.
They sure did. And they've been
Mhm.
doing a really good job. So
Yeah.
I actually just got this one in too. Is somebody wants to know how you came up with that title. No spoiler.
Well, yeah. Well, I don't think that was my original title. I think I had something that was like, um, I don't know. It had like a contraction in it. I'm trying to remember what my original title was. And so when we were doing title ideas, I think Ravel decided we should go with something that was more didn't was more positive for this first one. I think I'm trying to remember exactly how all that happened, but I actually love the title. I think it works perfectly for this story on so many levels, not just for the two main characters, but also for Marion and her relationship, like with her sister and her father, and just in every aspect. I think there's multiple levels that the title can fit. So I was pretty pleased with it in the end.
I like it too. It
Mm-hmm.
fits the book very well. The story, I
Mm-hmm.
should say.
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you haven't read it, I don't want to give you spoilers away, so I don't want to elaborate on that anymore. But yeah, it fits the story
Mm-hmm.
very well. You are correct. So,
Mm-hmm.
um,
Mm-hmm.
and then that kind of brings up something that's very interesting, and maybe not the readers always know that you guys don't always name the book, or I should say, you name it and it doesn't always get used.
Right.
How much of
Right.
your opinion matters in there?
I think generally authors' opinions really do matter a lot. We have to fill out a form that goes with each book, and we give like character descriptions, setting ideas. We give our input as far as the title thoughts that we have or words that might be important. Um, but honestly, I always leave the final, and I'm happy to leave the final decision up to my publisher, simply because that's their expertise, and they they just they always they know the market well, and they really know where they're trying to take this book, and the various readers that title will appeal to. They know that better than I do. So in the end, I always do trust their title selections, and I always enjoy not having that pressure of having to come up with the title, because now that I've been doing some indie books, I realize how hard it is to come up with titles, and I've had to do that for my own independently published books. And so I realize, and I'm grateful for the help that a publisher does offer with that.
That's interesting. So,
Mm-hmm.
and you've mentioned that, and I don't know how to ask it any other way. So answer as you wish. Which is easier for you?
Yeah. Well, I would say that there's advantages and disadvantages. Now, we're talking about traditional publication versus indie publishing. Okay.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Sorry about. I should have said
No,
that.
no, that's okay. Well, I'm not sure. Readers don't always pay too much attention to whether a book is being independently published by an author or whether it's traditionally published. Sometimes they don't even know and don't really care. Like if they really love, like if I really love an author, I'm just gonna buy their books, and I don't really pay attention to how it got there. I'm just glad it's there. So I know some readers feel the same way, but I have published multiple books on my own now, and some of those are a continuation of traditionally published series. So for example, I wrote Michigan Lighthouse series, and I wrote 3 books with Bethany House, and I decided, hey, I have a couple more stories I'd like to tell. And so I went ahead and I continued the series with 2 more books, and I published those independently through my own press, and went through the whole process of editing and everything on my own. And so some readers don't even realize, that those were independently published. And same thing with a recent brideship, my brideship series. I did 4 books in that series. And one of them, the very last one, I did independently publish, and I continued that series with that book. So most of my independently published books, however, are my young adult series. And so I originally published a young adult series with Zondervan back quite a long time ago now. And then I had some more series that I wanted to publish, and I decided to do those on my own, just so that I could have a little more freedom in what I could write about. And I wanted to go a little bit different direction. And so I've really enjoyed the process of having that freedom, especially with the young adult books, where I can develop the stories that I want to tell. And so that's one of the fun things about independent publishing, is that you can do whatever stories are in your mind and nobody can tell you no. So I really enjoyed that with my YA books. And so right now I'm working on, I've done 2 more series of YA books over recent years. And so I'm starting a brand new series, a 6-book series that the first 2 books in that series will release later this year. And so that is a fun thing that I'm working on currently. And again, the idea with the independently published books is that as an author, I'm responsible for finding my own editors, and also, finding someone to design the covers. And, it's a process. It's a little bit more work, but once you have those people lined up, and who you like and who you want to work with, then it's a little bit easier in that sense of just sending them your stuff when you're ready. So it's been a huge blessing. I love being able to do both. And I really love traditional publication as well, simply like you said, because they get to help with the titles, and they get to help write the blurbs that are on the back cover, and they get to, they do a lot for authors and getting our names out there in front of readers in places that it's a little more difficult for an independent published book to reach. So there's definitely advantages and disadvantages to both. And I'm happy that I get to do both. And I feel really blessed that I get that opportunity.
And as part of your reading public, so to speak, I'm glad you do both too. Don't tell Baker Publishing I said that.
Okay.
They might find out. Who knows?
Yeah.
So we're going to shift gears a little bit. Keep asking your questions about the book. We are very glad to go back to them. But so is there any books like on your TBR pile, to be read pile, that you're really excited about? Or is there something you are reading right now that's coming out soon that you would like to share about, or both?
Yeah, well, and this may or may not be a well-known fact about me, but I do not read within my genre. Yikes. No,
a couple authors that do that.
Yeah, I have a really hard time reading my fellow historical romance authors. They're wonderful books and I love those authors, but I just simply have a hard time getting into that. Maybe it's just because that's what I write, and so I'm looking for something different to read. So I almost read exclusively contemporary Christian romance. Contemporary, yeah, I know that's kind of weird, but I recently devoured. So my to be read pile is very small right now because I just recently devoured a whole bunch of new books. I read Denise Hunter's new one, Becky Wade's new one, Irene Hannon's Hope Harbor, her Blackberry Beach. Yeah. So I love like Nicole Deese, and I love Rachel Hauck and Susie May Warren, and all of those gals. They're right at the top of my my to be read piles always. So they're definitely a lot of wonderful Christian fiction authors to choose from. And so I think we're super blessed.
We are, and it really has grown in this last, I would say, probably 5 years, where
Mm-hmm.
the breadth of the Christian fiction is enormous. And I
Mm-hmm.
still have people that come in the store and are amazed,
Yeah.
the different types. And even now, when I can say to somebody, well, I do have a time travel book, they're like,
Yeah.
so it's kind of fun to be able to do that. So, and being able to introduce new people to Christian fiction because of things like you do, that
Mm-hmm.
stretch it a little bit and,
Right.
encourage it to grow on its own. So,
Mm-hmm.
but
Right.
yeah,
Yeah.
I was to say, go ahead. But
Oh yeah, I totally understand what you're saying, because I I have just recently taken over becoming the head librarian of our church library. I have been working in there for many years, and so the position just opened up recently to become the head librarian, and I was like, I don't know, I guess I'll do it. Someone needed to step in, but I just love working there because, like you get to introduce people all the time to fiction that they didn't even know about, and so I just I'm always sharing different genres, and that's why it's such a perfect job for me, because I know, so many different types of authors and so many different types of books. And so I'm able to just say, well, what are you interested in? And point them to like 10 different books and different authors. So it's really and like you said, it's so exploded, and I'm just thrilled that that I can just to help our library grow. And right now, actually, the library in our town, the town that I live in, is closed. It hasn't been open for like a year. We had a huge flood here in Midland, where I live, Midland, Michigan, last year. A couple of dams broke a year ago now. Just
I
like
remember that story. They just reviewed it
yeah.
here. Yep.
Yeah. And so our public library was flooded. And so they have not been open all year. They've had trouble with COVID and everything, getting workers in there to help clean up and repair and everything. So our church library is like, a gold mine for people right now, because, they can't get into the public library. And it's just wonderful to have walls of Christian fiction and to be able to show off, not in a prideful way, but sort of, just how great the industry is and how much is available. And that if they, like any author in the secular market, I can point you to a Christian author who writes in the same vein, and you will enjoy them just as much. So that's what's really cool.
Definitely. And I love that you're the head librarian. That I can't tell you how much I love that. Just
Yeah.
so awesome. So I have to admit, that would probably be, if I thought back, the one thing, besides working in a bookstore, being a librarian would have been kind of an interchangeable thing. So
yeah, for sure.
yeah. So, and I thank you for all you do for the church libraries. I work with them all the time here at the store, so I know what you guys go through. So thank you for that.
Yeah. Oh yeah. I love it.
Good. I'm glad to hear that. That's so exciting. So I do have somebody here. Oh, we'll ask that one later, but somebody wanted to know, where do you get your ideas for your books? Because you do have a wide variety of ideas.
Oh yeah.
Historical-ish, but your ideas are really different, which I really love.
Well, I mean, I think that most of my ideas come from, since I write historicals, a lot of time my ideas are from reading like biographies. I I guess I'm always looking for ideas everywhere. So when I like, for example, when I was starting this new young adult series that I'll be sharing the inspiration behind it soon. I'm really excited. But as I was preparing to plot and getting ready to plot this, I read numerous books and I watched numerous like movies, and I just like brainstorm, like list everything I see, you know, like nothing is too wild, nothing is too out there. I just keep a list, and I'm constantly adding to it. So I could have, you know, upwards of 15 to 20 pages just of my list of brainstorming before I even start plotting. And so that's sort of how I work. And then as another part of my planning process, I fill out these character worksheets that I print out a character worksheet for every single one of my main characters that I have, and it's 4 pages long and it's very detailed. And so I will fill that out and really try and get to know my characters before I even start writing. So they are living and breathing in my mind, and before even before first draft mode. So then once I start writing, they come to life even more. And so usually pulling together all my brainstorming, all my character work, and all of these different ideas, I have way more stuff than I can use. So I feel like I never really run out of ideas, which is really awesome. And so that brings up, well, how are you able to write multiple books a year? Because like last year, I don't know, this might be not a well-known fact either, but I published 6 books last year. And so that was a huge amount of coming up with ideas and writing and editing and all of that. And so sometimes people will wonder, well, how can you fit in writing so many books a year and have time for all of that? And I just want to say, especially to young writers, sometimes I get emails from people asking me like, how do you do this? How can you possibly keep up with it? And I just want to say, you don't start out at that point. You don't start, you know, when you start training for a marathon, you start in small increments and you work your way up to the larger mileage. And the same thing is true as a writer. You know, it's taken years of writing to get to the point where I can do that. And also I've moved into a new life stage where my kids are older. And so I have a little more time and they're a little more independent. And so it all kind of works together. And at this point in my life, I also treat my writing very professionally, so that when I sit down to write, it's my writing time and I do it. You know, I don't wait for inspiration to strike. I just sit down, do what I need to do, and complete whatever goal I've given myself for the day. And my goals have changed over the years, so that perhaps when my children were younger, 500 words a day was all I could do. And now I can write a whole lot more than that. And so, but I say that because there's a lot of new writers or young moms who think, oh, I have to wait. And I just want to encourage you that just start wherever you're at and write. If it's only 300 words a day or 500 words a day, it will eventually all add up into a book. And then someday you'll have built those muscles and you'll be ready for the next stage and writing a little more. So I kind of got off track there, Chris. I don't know what happened, but
It was all fantastic. It really was. I was going to say that's such good words of wisdom to somebody. And, you know, telling them what they're doing is right, not what you're doing for them is right. It's what, you know, I like that, how you said that. So, no, thank you. That rabbit trails are great because there's a lot of wisdom in them. So sometimes they can be silly, but there's a lot of wisdom. So thank you for sharing that. Don't ever apologize for doing that. So, because I know writers, especially new writers, are always like, oh, if I could only write like, and then fill in the blank, and that's not fair to them. So,
Right.
so
Right.
thanks for sharing that. I really
Yeah.
do. And then somebody's question came through while you were talking at the beginning about this new YA. Can you share like either the name of the series or the title? You did say you want to wait and you're going to release the inspiration behind it later, but so
Yeah.
if you can't, that's fine, you know, but
Okay.
I was curious. So I thought I'd ask.
Yeah, I'm going to hopefully have the covers to reveal by the end of June. And so be on the lookout in June, near the end of June, for the cover. The first 2 books will be released in November and December of this year. So that's about all I'm going to say for now.
We're going to have to all sign up for your newsletter now.
Yeah.
It'll be perfect. So that was the wrong question that I set aside. Somebody, and I asked this a little bit about Come Back to Me. Did you ever have like your favorite or most unusual research in any of your books? Like there's something I found out about in this book and it still sticks in my mind. Is there something, one of the readers is just interested in that? So.
Okay. Well, you know, for me, my process is, you know, like I said, it's different. Every author's process is different. For me, when I start writing a book, I fall in love with that book. And it is like the best thing ever. You know, like you're madly in love with that book while you're writing. You're like, wow, you know, this is the greatest book I'll ever write. And so then you're like, you know, really in love with that, the characters and the story and everything. And I love that process. But then you finish it and you put it aside, and then you get your editing back and you're like, ugh, this is terrible. This is the worst book I ever wrote. Nobody's gonna like this, and it's trash. So you kind of go from this love affair to the opposite extreme. And so when I get to the opposite extreme, I'm usually at a point where I don't want to see that book again. I don't even want to read that last edit. Like it is so hard for me. Like the very last edit of any book, I have a really hard time. I'm really self-critical, and I'm very much a perfectionist when it comes to editing. And so knowing that you can't possibly create a perfect book. I mean, it's just, I've tried and it just doesn't happen. No matter how many editors you have and how many times you read it, there will always be a few mistakes in a book. So that always bothers me. And so I never reread my books once they're published. They're done. They're gone and kind of out of my mind. So all that to say, once a book is out of published and out there, it's really hard for me to go back and delve into it. And yeah, so I don't necessarily keep track of all my research. I just kind of, the book's done, I move on, especially once the series is done. Obviously, when I'm in the middle of a series, I have lots of sheets. I'm keeping track of all these details that are between different books, and have to go back and reread things and make sure I'm getting everything correct. And for example, I'm also working on a series called the Colorado Cowboy series, and that series is with Bethany House Publishers, who does my historical romance. And so the first book in that series released in January, and the second book releases in October. And so I'm currently right now finishing up a very, very last edit for that second cowboy book, and trying to make sure all the details are correct. And I'll be getting the edits back on the third book in June. So so I'm always working on multiple projects, and it's just, there's a lot to keep track of, between editing and writing. And like right now I'm writing one book during the day and editing another one later. I try and split my day. So all that to say, yes, research is definitely something that I keep track of, but once I'm done with the book, I just kind of set it aside. So I know it's a boring answer.
No, that makes sense. So, and while I'm thinking of it, I know book number 1 is Cowboy for Keeps. What was the title of book number 2 in that series?
The Heart of a Cowboy.
That's what it is. I was
Yep.
in my brain going, I know I heard it.
Yeah.
I know it. I could not think of it. So
Don't feel bad. I was on a trip this last weekend. I was on a trip with my family, and I was with my mom, and she's like, where was that story set here? You did a story in a logging camp here in Michigan. What city was that in? And I was like, oh my goodness, I can't remember the city. So I know, like, it's been so long ago. Yeah, I know. So there's after so many, I mean, I have a notebook just for character names. And because I don't want to repeat characters, so I keep a list of all the characters so that I can, especially for heroes and heroines, that I can have unique names and not have like 2 Johns, or 5 Williams, or my favorite pet name, and repeating it over and over. So yeah, it just happens.
I have to admit, there was one time that I read, where you discover an author, puts in their new book, and then you go back and read some of their backlists, and 3 of their backlists had the same first name for different characters. They had nothing to do with each other. She just used the same guy name. And by the 3rd book, I was like, okay, I'm not sure I can read any more of her books,
Yeah.
At the end of that, somebody must have said, do you know?
Yeah, I know. It's so easy to do because you get pet names or pet phrases or pet sayings, and they just creep in and you don't even realize it. So
I can only imagine how to keep that straight. A notebook, that is brilliant. So,
yeah.
And this is kind of, okay, here we're rabbit trailing because we're just having fun. But do you like if you're reading something, or if you're talking to somebody and they say a name and you're like, ooh, and then write it down to save for later? Or is it like, no, this name fits this character as you're doing, because you said you wrote out the character plot first. Is that when they get their names?
No, for me, I'm very, very strategic about names. So for every series, I will look at the context of that series, and I'll say, what are names that fit with that particular type of story and that particular era. Obviously, you want, as a historical writer, you want names that were really in use at that time as well. And so looking at the story and then the characters themselves, and so there's just so many different factors that go into choosing names. And that's one of the things I really like about my young adult series, is that I have a little more freedom with that, and setting my story world in sort of a different place and make that's more of a fantasy, then I have a little more freedom with that as well. So yeah, I've been enjoying the new names for this new YA series because they're just kind of more unique, not off the wall. They're definitely common names, but yeah, because I want readers to feel like it's still historically grounded, but just according to that setting, if that makes sense.
It does. Perfect sense. So I have one more question for you. We got to get wrapped up. I know we could go on for hours and hours.
Oh yeah, I could keep talking.
So anyways, so where can we find the information about this new YA book, but any of your books? Well, besides bookhouse.com, of course.
Yeah. The best place to find information is obviously on my website. It's jodyhedlund.com, and I have a contact box there. So if you want to send me a note, It will come to me as an email through that contact box, and I always respond. So if you do not hear back from me, try again. Actually the best place to connect is in my Facebook group. I have a group called the Reader Room, and it is a wonderful place because there you can sign up to be an early reader if you want to be on my launch team, or we have giveaways, and we have different polls and quizzes and fun, cover comparisons and things like that. So it's really a great place, and I hang out there and try and respond to different people's comments. And right now, what's been really fun is my early readers are starting to leave lots of comments and pictures of them reading their books, and people who've gotten their pre-orders from Baker Book House are posting pictures of their books and even links to their reviews. And so it's fun to get all that early enthusiasm in. But it's just a great place to hang out. So I would encourage you to look that up on Facebook and join in. You have to kind of ask to enter the Reader Room, but I almost always admit everyone who wants to join. So
yeah, once we get one of those bots, you gotta say no to. So well, Jody, thank you. Thank you for tonight. Fascinating. Thank you for, kicking us behind that little curtain of what it's like to be a writer, especially of time travel, which was always fun to kind of dream about, but be glad we live where the electricity is. So
yeah, same here.
I appreciate that. Yeah, we'll have to get together and talk about book 2, and then we can discuss the whole series together.
There you go. And then you guys can let me know if you want me to write a book 3, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, the best way to do that, readers, is to actually buy this one and leave comments and reviews for it, and then the publishers see that. So
right,
that is the best way to do it. So, so thank you, readers, for joining us tonight.
Yeah, thank you, everybody.
Come back to me. Definitely go to bakerbookhouse.com. There is a pre-order special, even though it'll go in the mail today. Well, maybe not today because it's about 8 o'clock, but tomorrow at 40% off, and that is good through next week Tuesday. Once Tuesday is around, then the discount will disappear a little bit. So if you have any questions about that, contact us. But once again, thank you very much, Jody.
Thank you. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everybody. Good night.